Hello all, and thank you for watching this webinar tonight on stormwater facilities in the Northfield Community Association, brought to you by the Clark Conservation District and the City of Vancouver. I'm Kayla Bucklew with the Clark Conservation District. We are a non-regulatory agency that works with residents of Clark County to provide technical assistance to encourage good stewardship of our environment. You can learn more about us or check out some of our other past webinars on our website at clarkcd.org. And after you're done watching the webinar, we do ask that you please take a moment to fill out our survey for us to let us know how we did. For those of you who are watching the recording, the link should be posted just below the video on our website. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn things over to Nikki Gio from the City of Vancouver, who will be giving our presentation tonight. Nikki?
Thanks, Kayla. Yeah, so my name is Nikki Gio, and I'm an environmental scientist with the City of Vancouver. I'm in the surface water program, and I've been with the city for about 5 years. I'm going to talk today specifically about the Northfield community stormwater facilities and maintenance that's needed there. So I'll just jump into these slides. If I can get it to work. There we go. Okay. So the first question, the place to start is, what is stormwater? So to talk about stormwater facilities, we have to understand stormwater. And this is just basically, in real simple terms, it's rain that falls on the roofs of our houses, our driveways and streets. It goes into these storm drains. So this is an illustration of a storm drain that you would typically see in your neighborhood. They're out in the street and they collect that rainwater that runs off. That runoff picks up all kinds of things, everything it touches, whether it's leaves in the fall, trash, oil from your driveway, cigarette butts, that kind of stuff. It all gets picked up with that rainwater and carried to the storm drains. So that is stormwater, which is the technical term for the system that we have to manage with the City of Vancouver. We have a permit from the state. So one of our permit requirements for the stormwater management is to have private facility maintenance. So the code says that the owners of private stormwater facilities are responsible to operate and maintain those facilities. So we have around, just over 1,400 private facilities in the City of Vancouver, many of them in residential neighborhoods, lots on commercial property, city property, along the roadways. Basically all that rain that falls on roofs and driveways has to be managed by a stormwater facility. That's the state requires. We have to have these facilities to remove pollution and slow down that stormwater from reaching our creeks and streams. So typically stormwater facilities on private property are recorded in a plat, which is the real estate documents for that neighborhood, and they may also be in a covenant. So if you have a homeowners association like Northfield, there may be covenants and restrictions for what you can have, the color you can paint your house, that kind of thing. So that maintenance should be included in one of those legal documents. And then the maintenance has to comply with either the state manual or an approved site plan. So the city at the time of construction gets a site plan, and we keep the records for that. While we don't own private facilities, we do have the authority to inspect them for compliance. So we can come out unannounced and look at the private stormwater facilities, see how they're working, take photos, and we enter that into a database, and we look at a condition assessment. How well is it working? It was designed to do, ABC, slow down water, infiltrate rain. How well is it working? How well is it functioning? So for this particular neighborhood, for Northfield, in the recorded plat, which is the real estate documents, there's this tract D, which is set aside from the lots with the houses on them. And it's set aside specifically to collect the stormwater. It was designed in the late 90s, 1996 was the approved plan, and that's when it was still in Clark County. So this before it was annexed by the city. So the language in the plat says that Tract D is a storm drainage easement to Clark County, and that just would give the county the ability to go in and inspect that facility. We do have abatement authority, so if the facility failed and there was some kind of catastrophic flooding, that easement allows us to go into the private property and alleviate the flooding, like to get the street to drain or something like that. So, so this is a screenshot from that recorded plat for Northfield, roughly showing the bounds of Tract D where the stormwater swale is located. So typically what we look at is the design, the engineering design of the private facilities to see what maintenance is needed. So these are just a couple of examples. These aren't specific to Northfield, but they generally show what we're seeing is a plan view, looking down from the sky, like we're looking at in Track D. We see where the stormwater comes in and connects and discharges, and then we see a cross section, which is shown in the bottom left there. That's typically what we'll see on approved plans, is that level of detail. So the code and the ordinance for the city's maintenance requirements refers to the approved engineering plans. So we just go look at the plans that are on file from the original construction, and we just say, is it working? We list those deficiencies in our database. And then if there's something about the facility that the design isn't working anymore, or say you have street trees that are nearby, that are causing issues, private facilities can be modified, but they have to be designed by a professional engineer. So if you want to change your stormwater swale on a private property, you can do that at any time. It just has to be done by a professional engineer. And then they have to submit, like these drawings you're seeing here, an engineer would have to submit a drawing for the revisions. So it's not that, you have one layout from 1990s and you're stuck with it forever. You can always revise that facility as long as you have a professional engineer and city approval. So pretty straightforward process. Northfield has a bioswale, biofiltration swale. There are a couple different terms depending on the time when the facility was designed, but it's a really simple, low-tech stormwater treatment system. It's just meant to get the stormwater into the facility, have the water run across the grass, slow it down, and soak it in. That's the long and short of it. There's no special soil media. Sometimes they would add compost if the construction site soils were poor, or if you had fill at the site. But typically, it's just grass. It's just stormwater coming into a grassy area that's dedicated to hold that water and soak it in. And in the 90s, in 1993 is when we started our first swale requirements. This was state of the art. This was like cutting edge technology. And we were trying our best to keep pollution out of our creeks and streams. So these grassy swales were thought to soak up pollution, whether it's, nutrients like fertilizers, or, just even trash and leaves off of roadways. They would come into these grassy areas, be easy to clean up, and you wouldn't have to remove that stuff from creeks and streams. So we were trying to protect our water bodies, and this was a really simple way to do that. So this is a couple of examples from commercial properties that just show, there's a lot of variety of swales, but the consistent thing is just they're flat on the bottom and grassed. So trying to just filter the stormwater through the grass. Here's a couple of different views. So this is I think these images are a little easier to understand than the engineered drawings, especially if people aren't looking at engineered drawings every day like we do. So on the left is a stormwater swale looking down. So the basic components, you bring water in at the inlet, which is at the top, and it runs through this flat bottom channel. And they have a couple of flow spreaders across that run 90 degrees to that flow of water to try to slow it down and soak it in. And those are very common in facilities that were designed in the 90s, those concrete flow spreaders that would run right across the channel. And then the stormwater, in high flows would just run out the outlet, which is on the bottom of this diagram. And so in Vancouver, where we have a lot of low intensity and long duration storm events, we have rains that just drizzle for days. This kind of swale is very effective. It absorbs most water. Most people will say, oh, I never see, this doesn't turn into a river. I never see water just racing through the whole thing. It comes in a third of the way and soaks in, or halfway and soaks in. So that's very common. They'd be designed to take, a really heavy rain event, but most of the time in the city of Vancouver, you're going to see very low intensity, just drizzly all day rains. And these swales are great for managing that. The illustration on the right is showing the cross section. And so if you cut the swale down the middle, this is what it should look like. So it's that flat bottom grass swale. Very simple. This diagram does include compost and talks about if you need a liner. That's sometimes if the soils weren't very good, you could line the swale with plastic or clay to try to keep the water in it. But compost was very common to help the grass grow. And so over time, these are the elements the components that we're doing our inspections on. We're checking for the pipes, looking for the flow spreader, making sure that grass channel is still in place. And you kind of see this U shape in the cross section. So that's what we're looking for. That channel needs to be a U shape. So sometimes it'll kind of change shape over time, and we need to keep it that flat bottom with those angled sides so that it can still be mowed. So it's really important to keep that geometry, and we check for that during our inspections. So this is the Northfield swale, and this is the approved engineering plan. So there's a lot of numbers on here and a lot of figures, but the highlighted yellow parts are the storm pipes that come off of the street in the neighborhood, and then they bring the stormwater into the swale. So the blue arrows, I'm kind of showing the flow of water. The water goes south and then it heads west. It comes into this swale flow spreader. So that's that concrete bar that runs 90 degrees across the channel that's trying to slow the water down. And then it's just a grass, flat bottom swale, just a very straightforward facility. It connects to the outlet is on the left side. That little black square is the outlet, and that drains into the city system there to the south. So if that facility were to be full, it would overflow into the city system on the south. So you can kind of see track D. It's pretty big for the facility being as large as it is. We have some more detail about the width of the facility. So it was, part of it was changed at one point, and it was reduced from 13 feet wide down to 11 feet wide. So given the size of track D, there's a lot of area in there that's not swale, that's landscaping and kind of buffer plantings. But the swale this is some of that design narrative from the engineer at the time that it was designed, and it talks about that energy, that flow spreader, and trying to get that the grate on the downstream end where it connects to the city. So just a little bit of context on the design, that it was modified at one point, and there is a specific note in here that the swale will be privately maintained. And so that was the intent from the very beginning, from when it was first installed. And it's consistent with what the recorded plat, the real estate documents show. So the specific concerns that we have at Northfield, just kind of walking through those components, that we looked at in the diagram of a swale. The first thing is the inlet pipe. So where the water comes in from the street. So in the diagram I was showing, this would have been on the right side of the swale. That pipe, it's kind of hard to see because this photo has some shade, but the pipe is mostly buried. So we really want that pipe to be free flowing, unobstructed. There's a rock in the way. There's kind of a little mud hole around it. We'd like to see, that 11 feet wide, this pipe should come into an 11-foot wide area that's flat. So that water just comes right out of that pipe and into the grass. There was in the engineering plans a flow spreader, so there should be a concrete bar to slow the water down so that it doesn't erode and dig a hole by the pipe. But you can see here that that pipe is 15 inches, and I think there's maybe 3 inches of it still open. So there's a lot of accumulated leaves and soil here that needs to be cleaned out so that pipe can be free flowing. If the pipe isn't cleaned out, it backs water up into the street. So it's really important to get this pipe open, free flowing, to let the water into the swale. We're assuming that the flow spreader is buried under sediment and leaves. So for digging this out, you'd want to be careful, and hire a contractor preferably that's mindful that there is a concrete bar under there so that it doesn't get damaged and you don't have to replace it. So you want to carefully have that sediment and leaf debris removed without ripping out that concrete spreader bar. And here's a photo a little farther down. So the photo is looking back towards that inlet pipe, which you can see there kind of by the bushes. But there's a tree stump. The tree was there last year in the photos that we had, but this year it's been cut down. And if you think about the bottom of the swale needs to be 11 feet wide, a flat space, that tree stump probably needs to come out. The way the base of the trees grow will make the water run around it, and you want it to the water to have a straight, flat flow path. So that tree stump has to come out. There's also sections of the swale that are missing grass. So there's some bare soil here. We're concerned about that because we really want to see the grass be there to soak up the stormwater. And it's tough to tell from this, but it looks like there is grass in other places. Sometimes we have a lot of shade and have to try a different seed mix, but it does look like the facility can grow grass. It just maybe isn't in some spots. So it needs some sediment removal probably to get that pipe open, and then reseeding to get this grass cover throughout the whole swale. And this is looking the other way. So this is looking to the left towards the outlet inside the swale. And one of the big issues in this swale is these cattails. So these are plants that are growing here in the middle of this facility, and they're wetland plants. So it looks like there's some standing water issues in the facility. There shouldn't be water standing. It should be able to free flow out of there. So the cattails should not be there. They're considered an invasive species and they have to be removed. And for this particular facility, it's not a pond. It's meant to be a dry swale. So we need it to have a grass bottom and to be mowable. And that conflicts with these cattails. So they have to be removed. We don't allow you to go in and spray them with herbicide because this is a stormwater facility. We want to protect the water quality. These need to be mechanically removed. So you need to have equipment, to go in and dig out the roots and take them out and properly dispose of them. So this is a pretty big issue for this swale because you don't have the flat bottom and you don't have the grass. So this facility is really not meeting the design intent. That those cattails will keep the water pooled up and keep it from running out, keep it from flowing across the way it was designed to. So it's a pretty significant issue that needs to be resolved. And this is a photo from, I think it was last year. The tree is still there on the right side, and we're looking west again, seeing those cattails with a little bit more growth around them. And one problem that we're seeing because of the cattails and likely part of this tree stump issue is the water is not coming out flat and going across the swale. It's cutting a channel, and you can see it there in that image. It's kind of veering off to the left and trying to go around the cattails. And so that kind of channel forming is a real clear indication to us that there is sediment in the bottom of the swale, that the water can't flow straight across. And so in terms of removing sediment, we need to get the pipe open, have that stump removed, and then we probably need to shoot some elevations and look at the grade, make sure that it's flat and that it's 11 feet wide, flat area. Removing the sediment to make it flat will help the water spread out. So again, these are pretty significant issues that are really indicating the facility's not working the way it's supposed to. So some general maintenance tips about private stormwater facilities is to have a plan. Have a plan for routine maintenance every year, twice a year maybe. You're going to need some trash removal, leaf removal, sediment removal. That needs to be part of, budgeting and planning for the care of that facility, something the HOA should have. And then keeping records as you do maintenance. If you have a contractor come out and remove sediment or, remove a tree, keeping records of that is really helpful. You want to find out who is managing maintenance. Is it the HOA? Is there a board member? Is your property manager dealing with it? Those are all possibilities, but in terms of, keeping track of your swale in your neighborhood, know who is responsible for that, who is managing the maintenance, and then have a copy of those approved plans, because if you don't know what it's supposed to look like, it's really hard to keep it working. And the approved plans are not so easy to read, but if you're working with a contractor or maintenance provider, it should be really valuable information for them on what services you need and what you can provide. The city has an inspection log, just a template form that you can use. There's a screenshot of it here, just to keep with the HOA records. Somebody was out on this date and here were the comments. Here's who's providing our inspection. And that will really help with continuity in the facility. A lot of swale maintenance can be self-performed or done through your landscape provider. So if you have a contractor that's coming through and doing your mowing, there's a lot of maintenance that's just routine maintenance that they can do. Some of them are, just mowing the grass, reseeding, removing weeds, and then that sediment and debris removal. So when you have a little bit of sediment or, just a few leaves, to have your contractor go out and remove those when it's just, maybe a wheelbarrow full, rather than having to, open up the swale with all of these leaves. Those are routine activities that can be done. If your landscaper is coming out every 2 weeks or every 3 weeks, it's something that they can easily take care of. There is a regional website with a lot of resources, the Stormwater Partners, Southwest Washington, and we have guides on the website on all of these different stormwater facility types. So there's a lot of resources there, checklists, videos. There's a contractor list. It's a great resource to check out and to share with your contractors or your maintenance provider. But you can't always do the maintenance yourself or with one of your landscape providers. Sometimes, if there's a manhole or a vault, it has to have somebody that's trained and has the right equipment to do that cleaning. So in the example of Northfield, we're talking about a pretty large rehab. This is a significant grading issue. There may need to be repairs to the pipe. We don't know. We can't see the whole pipe. So we really recommend that a contractor be hired, somebody that can come in with a mini excavator, remove that sediment, have it done in a couple of days, rather than trying to have a landscaper, do the work by hand. It can be really hard to make a flat bottom facility if you're doing it by hand. And just in terms of getting the swale back up and working, hiring a contractor is really the most efficient way to do that. And we can help you with that process as well. We have a contractor list available. And really what you want to think about when hiring a contractor, especially for a swale that needs a significant amount of work like the one at Northfield, is to try to get 3 bids. Even if you have a contractor you usually work with, you really want to compare prices. You want to look at the detail included in that bid. Different contractors have different tasks they think are associated with the job. So, have them detail that work. And in terms of Northfield, we really would want to see survey, somebody taking some elevation shots, making sure that you're getting seeding, getting the vegetation back in that facility, and then properly disposing of the soil. That excess sediment that's accumulated in that facility, and the cattails especially, they need to be removed and they need to be properly disposed of. So you don't want a landscape contractor who's going to say, I don't know what to do with this material. You want to ask at the time of bid. And another good thing to ask when you're hiring a contractor for a private facility is if they guarantee their work. If your facility, they do the work and they leave and your facility is still not functioning properly, are they going to guarantee that work? If they're still standing water, if the grass washes all out, are they going to guarantee that work? Are they going to guarantee that when they're done, your facility will be in compliance with city requirements? And that's something that we see. There's, quite a few contractors now that are doing this work. We've been really emphasizing private facility maintenance for about 5 years now. So we have a group of contractors we see again and again, and they're really familiar with these requirements. They know kind of the things that can go wrong. So, ask for that detail, get the bids. This photo I thought was helpful because this is a site where we have the contractor is out there with survey equipment. They're trying to reestablish that wide flat swale, but this is the kind of work that we'd want to see at Northfield. We'd really want to see that vegetation stripped out, that sediment pulled out, get that facility back down to a flat bottom, have some elevations shot, and then have the vegetation reestablished. Another thing to think about with your private facility in your neighborhood is that everything that happens in the neighborhood, that first slide we talked about, stormwater is just the rain running down the street that picks up everything that's in the street. That includes stuff on your driveway or the sidewalk, even things in your yard. So think about how you can prevent those things from ending up in your swale. Things like pet waste, leaves, anything that you can keep cleaned up out of the street that doesn't end up in your swale is something that doesn't have to be cleaned up later. So we want to prevent pollution wherever we can. We really want to try to keep things out of the street, out of the storm drains, and out of your swale. One good way to know if you're having any kinds of specific issues is to look in the swale after a storm. Go in there after it's been sprinkling all day and see, are there leaves? Is there trash? Do you see an oil sheen? We've got a couple of pictures here of oil sheens that we've seen in neighborhoods. Those leaks and drips on the driveway, they don't seem like much, but when you get a nice soaking rain, 8 or 10 hours of rain, that oil will end up in the storm drains and it will go into the stormwater swale. So we really want to see you use a dry absorbent. Kitty litter or floor sweep is fine. It doesn't have to be a special product. We just want to see it brushed into the pavement and then swept up and put into the trash. You want to properly dispose of it. Don't blow it out into the street or wash it into the storm drain. You really want to try to get that oil absorbed and then just put it in your regular trash. That's totally acceptable. This photo on the left is showing, the sediment that can accumulate. This is in a manhole. This is outside of a swale, but it's showing the leaves and sediment that can come off of just a regular residential neighborhood road. When you think about that much kind of waste material in the street, you kind of start to realize, how it ends up in the swale. And as much as you can prevent that from getting into the storm drains, it'll save you money on the swale maintenance. Thinking about spills is really important too, because accidents happen. We put our trash and recycling into the street. Sometimes people put out used oil into the street for recycling. So think about spills. Think about, if there was a spill in your neighborhood, what would you want residents to do? What would you tell your neighbors to do? Maybe set out your used oil inside of a tub, maybe put it inside of a box, just something so it doesn't get knocked over, so it doesn't get run over. Try to prevent spills and think about cleanup. Think about having a bag of kitty litter or floor dry, especially if you're going to do at-home oil changes and have that used oil regularly. Have a bag of kitty litter, clay litter in the garage, just ready to go in case there is some kind of leak or spill, especially in the rain, and keep that out of your storm drains. Keep it out of your swale. It goes a long way. Oh, so I have a picture of Jordan on that slide. So this is my contact information, and you can always reach me to ask about your facility, your contractors, bids for maintenance work. Happy to help, happy to, talk to the board if there's a landscaping committee, whatever it takes for the HOA to look at this maintenance issue and really get it addressed and resolved. We're always trying for voluntary compliance. It's really important for us to try to work with homeowners to get these facilities functioning. We do have code enforcement requirements that we can result to if we don't get some kind of cooperation, some kind of response. We can do code enforcement, but we would prefer not to. We really want to work with homeowners. We really want to get this done on a voluntary basis. And so that's what this presentation is about, is providing the information to homeowners, putting it out here, making it available. We really want to try to reach folks where they are and provide this technical assistance. So please give me a call or email me about your facility, and I look forward to hearing from you. I think